As Nigeria looks to refine its electoral system, proposed amendments to the Electoral Act are set to play a pivotal role in shaping the future of the nation's elections. These amendments aim to address various aspects of the electoral processes, from consolidating all elections on a single day to introducing diaspora and early voting options. Each proposal seeks to enhance the efficiency and inclusivity of the electoral system with the goal of increasing voter participation and ensuring a more streamlined process. The introduction of these changes comes with its own set of challenges, including logistical considerations and the need for robust implementation strategies. Technology's role in modernizing elections, coupled with effective voter education, will also be crucial in supporting these reforms. As Nigeria embarks on this journey of electoral transformation, the focus will be on ensuring that the amendments foster a more transparent, fair, and effective democratic process. I am Ezenwa Wagu. Welcome to Electoral Reform Half Hour on NTN News 24. This program is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. We are honored to have in the studio a newly minted professor of sociology, Professor Abubakar Umar Kari, from the University of, indeed he's the Dean of Student Affairs of University of Abuja, and a professor of sociology in that school. With a PhD in political sociology, he specializes in electoral behavior and democratic governance. Today, he will sharing insights on how electoral amendments can shape the future of Nigeria's elections. Kyari, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Eze. Good evening, viewers. Thank you for having me.
Kyari, straight on, let's cut the chase. The National Assembly is currently considering several amendments to the Electoral Act. One proposal suggests that all elections, presidential, governorship, senatorial, House of Representatives, and indeed state assembly and local governments be held in one day. What are your thoughts around this proposal?
Well, I think before I conclude on whether I support or oppose this, I think it's very, very important to briefly explain why these kind of recommendations. Nigerians have been quite concerned, perhaps, or even worried about the tendency to have bandwagon effects. In the last 2 or 3 general elections, the first elections day was for presidential and national assembly election. And there appeared to be, to an extent, a domino effect, meaning that a party that costed home and produced the president and probably a plurality of members of the National Assembly turned out to do much, much better in the subsequent elections. There is also this fear that primary elections have been characterized by desperation, have been hijacked by big men and women in court. Sometimes primary elections have turned out to be much more problematic than even the actual election themselves. And so the belief has been that if all elections will be held in one day, perhaps that could remove or at least reduce to a manageable level this desperation to become candidates and so on and so forth. It's something that may deepen our electoral process. But the fear is that in as much as it is attractive or even desirable, but it is fraught with difficulties.
Well, Kyari, you know, we always come with amendments that through a path that we have trod before. You know that at the beginning of this democracy in 1999, the National Assembly actually wanted to propose this same very law, and it was opposed by. So how do you think that a sitting president, and in most cases who will want a second term, will assent to a bill that seems to injure him the way you have explained now?
Yeah, actually that is another challenge. It is also something that should worry us, because the reality of politics and elections is that is mainly issue of consolidation. Those who are in charge would want to consolidate, want to perpetuate them, or at least they want to maintain their advantage. And anything, any idea or any innovation that is likely to jeopardize their chances of consolidation will be opposed directly or indirectly. So the incumbents may view this particular proposition as with a feeling of discomfort. They may not be exactly comfortable with it, because it may threaten their hegemony. It may threaten their quest to continue in power. It's a very huge challenge.
So how do we meander out of that challenge?
Well, as usual, the issue is for we, the electorate, indeed, the stakeholders in the electoral process, to insist if there will be a consensus and if really there will be sincerity. I have not yet said that I'm completely enamored of this particular proposition, but I don't think it's a bad one. But conditionally, particularly if we can address logistical problems, because as it is now, in certain instances, it usually takes days for results of election to be announced, even with all the technology and so on and so forth. And we are talking about 1 or 2 elections, a presidential and national assembly election.
We know about the logistical nightmare that our size.
And another thing is, beyond the logistical nightmare, there is this suggestion, and it may be true, but I believe it is not too much problem for me, for an average voter to collect 5 ballot papers and cast 5 ballot papers. So the average time to accomplish balloting.
We prepare for 96 million prospective voters across, the thousands of polling units that
only about 15 or so turn out.
So so when you do even the maths itself, there are those who are talking about Liberia, and the Liberia is the size of the voting strength of Imo State, for instance, and say, hey, they vote in one day and all of that.
Yeah.
Those, do you think, because I also know that you've had extensive international experience around this, do you think that there are best practices that we can look at that compares with our size? India, for instance, and maybe South Africa. What do you think? Those comparisons, can they be brought to bear in our discussion?
India can. South Africa is still numerically far below us, even though in terms of political consolidation and development and evolution over the years, they have done very well. But India I think they have almost 1 billion voters. And they tend to do these things seamlessly. But probably because of an well-entrenched political culture, and because election has actually taken root very seriously. They have been having elections
periodically.
Yes, since the 1950s, or at least since they split with first Pakistan and then Bangladesh and so on. So they have evolved.
I just hope I get used to calling you Prof. You know, so Prof, on the table for for amendments, there are twin issues that everyone is talking about: the diaspora voting, early voting. You know, I know that there are proposals for amendments to ensure that those of us who work in elections, security agencies, the media, can have early voting. People are talking about the enormous contribution of diaspora in terms of diaspora funding and what it means to our country, and that we should join other countries to engage in those twin.
Even Niger does it.
There are even people who are talking about people in correctional centers.
Yes, but I'm not totally for it, even though I'm fully for early voting. Yeah, I think many people have been unnecessarily disenfranchised, and it shouldn't be so. People hold political opinions, and all Nigerians, eligible voters, should be able to cast their votes, whether they are in the security service or those who are active participants in elections and so on and so forth. So journalists, security, and so on and so forth should be able to vote. And I think in terms of number, it is a manageable number. And this is something that can actually be done without much problem. But the issue of diaspora voting, I think, as desirable as it is quite controversial. And the Nigerian factor is the major problem. First and foremost, to determine who is a diasporan Nigerian in the US, in UK, it may interest you that in certain African countries, there are hundreds of thousands of Nigerians. As a matter of fact, there are millions of of people that can conveniently call themselves Nigerians in the Sudan. And so if you come back from Sudan with a register of 1 or 2 million voters, some people are not going to agree. Some people will cry foul, and so on. So unless if we address that problem of suspicion, unless if we evolve a mechanism of determining truly who is a diasporan Nigerian, because
you are raising issues of the trust deficit.
Yes.
But we have to run. We have to run because we'll soon proceed on break. The challenging issue of appointments of resident electoral commissioners, the national chairman, and resident electoral commissioners is still an issue. Justice Uwais had his recommendations, but I don't know how contemporary that recommendation is now. Are there thoughts that you can?
Yeah, it is quite germane.
Before we proceed,
it is quite germane because if you look at INEC, it is called Independent National Electoral Commission, and INEC has evolved over the years. Before, financially, it was almost completely dependent on the executive.
Kyari, just hold your thoughts. Let's go on a short break. When we return, the conversation will continue. Welcome back. We're still speaking to Professor Kari, and it's glad we're very excited to have you in the studio with us. Technology is also a burning issue, though you were sharing thoughts, but I want you to, because of time, I want you to be able to put in all of this. We've shifted from from 2002, there has been incremental intrusion of technology into our electoral process to the point now where we have come to BVAS and the IREV. What do you think this means for integrity of election results and all the confusion around what that means?
Yeah, there have been remarkable, noticeable, if not a palpable improvement brought about by technology. But if you could allow me just a minute on the issue of election officials, INEC, Rex, and chairman. Over the years, we have been quite disturbed that people who are openly partisan, members of political parties, people of questionable character and integrity have been appointed as into key positions in INEC. It shouldn't be so. INEC should be insulated from interference from any of the arms of government. And therefore, the idea of trying to completely insulate INEC from outside interference is a novel one. The issue of technology is revolutionary. We have seen the evolution from crude method of voting to using technology. Accreditation has been simplified. The voting process has been easing up. Transmission of results has also improved, and so on and so forth. So technology has tremendously improved the electoral process, and we need more of it. But beyond that, we also need the human element, because one of the problems that we have in our electoral process is the abuse or misuse of technology itself by both the members of the political class and election officials. We have seen the controversies surrounding the 2023 elections, the accusations that IREV was not allowed to function during the presidential election, even though it worked for the National Assembly election that happened at the same time. There was the issue of tampering with technology and so on and so forth. The BVAS still has one or two issues and so on. And in most cases, it is not technology per se, it is the human element. So we need improvement both within the realm of technology and also the human element. If we do that, technology can lead us to the desired destination. And what is the desired destination? To have a free, fair, transparent, credible, and acceptable election.
Is there any country that has surrendered its elections to technology?
No, I'm not canvassing for complete surrender technology. I said the use of technology to improve, to continue to improve the electoral process. Up to now, there is no country that will say, okay, we'll do something like online voting. Even though at the university, we did it with a population of just about 20,000. We have been using it for the yes, but still there are people who swear with everything that we are rigging the elections, even though we knew we are not rigging the election. So technology without the human element or without trust,
with attitudinal reinforcement to it,
is also a recipe for disaster. Absolutely. Because it raises suspicion, pessimism, recriminations, and even conflict.
Outside the classroom, you've been very entrenched in engagement with both donor agencies in voter education. How do we, some of these amendments, these strategies that are coming, how do we prepare the electorates to embrace them? Because part of the challenge that we've seen in our work in PACA, going around the country, having town halls and trainings for the media, is this unbelievable level of ignorance on the laws, the Electoral Act. How from what you've done with, I know, different institutions, how do you think we can prepare the electorate for these amendments and changes that are coming?
Yeah, The donor agencies, they have done very well, whether IRI, IFES, NDI, and the rest of them, in terms of advocacy and in terms of training categories of stakeholders. But the missing link, as far as I'm concerned now, is how to mobilize and educate the voters themselves. There have been adequate or fairly adequate training of election officials, party leaders, party agents, and so on and so forth. But the ordinary voters also need to be mobilized, need to be trained, need to be educated in terms of the intricacies of voting, including their own rights as citizens, their democratic rights as voters, to also mobilize them to constitute themselves into a sentinel for the democratic process itself, because they are the people who can defend democracy. They are the people who can guarantee free, fair, credible, and electoral polls. Even if you train agents, you train election officials, you train party leaders, and so on and so forth, and the voters are not doing the right thing, you may not achieve it. So there should be systematic shift to be training the voters in their cohorts. They may be disaggregated into youth, women, the elderly, and so on. And the donor agencies, the political parties, who are actually the major beneficiaries,
should up their game.
Yes, should up their games in terms of political education.
Prof, what are these, apart from these conversations that are already on in the National Assembly, are there other reforms that you are thinking about that can, that can help the future of elections in the country?
Of course, there should be. Election reform is a process, it's not a destination, and we do not have a perfect document. If you look at the Electoral Act, even the Constitution that governs elections, there are certain things that should be done. So that is why at every cycle, every National Assembly cycle, issues come up. After every election, some issues come up. So the new things is that Nigerians, particularly stakeholders, and particularly we, the commentariats, and particularly we that are so keen about ensuring free, fair, credible elections, we should always be alert and discover missing links. And these missing links should not only be identified, they should be well articulated. And
so in 30 seconds, just give us your final thoughts on what, especially Edo is coming and the rest. Just in less than 30 seconds, can you just
Well,
share?
I pray that Edo will be better than the last election, particularly in terms of vote buying, in terms of keeping the peace. I also pray that an acceptable winner will be elected next week Saturday, and the election will be acceptable for all.
This is where we draw the curtain on this episode of the Electoral Reform Half Hour. We wish to specially thank Professor Abubakar Kari for your time and contributions on the program. It was a great pleasure having you. Thank you so very much for coming. Electoral Reform Half Hour is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa and with sponsorship from MacArthur Foundation. We are live every Saturday from 8:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. with a repeat broadcast every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Same station. You can contact us on our social media handles showing on your TV screen. Thank you so very much for watching. I am Ezenwa Wagu.